Good evening. This is Pastor Barbara, AKC Preacher with Parrots. Today is May 29th. Is it Memorial Day or Memorial Day is Monday? Anyway, we're in that long weekend. We're in chapter 16 in our chronological study of the Bible, which is about to end because we're just 6 or 7 chapters away from the last verse in the Bible. At least the New Testament portion of it is going to end. I see on one of my screens, I don't know where I'm picking up some light. I guess I have light outside. The sun is just going down here on the mountain. All right. We are getting ready for the last 7 plagues. There have been 3 occasions when there have been 7 plagues. This is the last of the 3. We ended with some information about the temple that will exist at this future time. And one of the last things that we did was, and after I looked and beheld the temple of the tabernacle of the testimony in heaven was open. And it talked about the Ark of the Covenant. And 7 angels came out of the temple. And they had 7 plagues. They were dressed in linen. They had gold cloth over their chest. One of the 4 beasts, I wish they were called beings. I guess they're called beasts or creatures because we don't really know that they were men, angels, or what kind of beings. But one of them gave unto the 7 angels golden vials. So each angel had a vial. And the temple in heaven was filled with the glory of God and his power. And now we come to chapter 16, where we begin tonight. And I heard a great voice out of the temple saying to the 7 angels, go your way and pour out the vials of the wrath of God upon the earth. As we get closer to the end, the terrible things that happen get worse. When it speaks of an earthquake, what we had recently, a couple of years ago, in Japan, was nothing. These earthquakes, the last ones, will be like no earthquake you've ever heard on the news yet. And yet these people continue to behave the way they do. I can't imagine stubbornness so great that I would want to participate in these things that brought on that kind of suffering. I need to adjust one of the cameras, not the one that the live group is looking at, but the one for our recording. And I heard a great voice out of the temple saying to the seven angels, "Go your ways and pour out the vials," these large containers, "the vials of wrath of God on the earth." And the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth. And there was a noisome and grievous sore that came upon men, and upon them which worshipped his image. Remember, the Antichrist will have some kind of image when they're halfway through or 3.5 years into this period of time. And whether it will be operated by demon power, whether it will be some type of computer software controlled, this image will be able to interact and talk with people. And the first went and poured out his vial, and a sore came upon them which worshipped his image. That's the image they're talking about. I want to read some of this from a more modern version. The first angel went and poured out his bowl on the land. Ugly and painful sores broke out on the people who had the mark of the beast and worshipped his statue. We hear a lot about a mark on the hand or the forehead, and that if those that are living during that time don't take the mark of the beast, they won't be able to buy and sell. The video that we saw this morning showed some of the ways that some people will survive. We had an example of somebody that caught some fish. Things that are in cans, if the so-called government doesn't take them from you, the government of the Antichrist or the beast, there may be some food, grass, whatever animals eat. But as far as getting food the normal way, going and buying it and paying for it, it will be necessary to take this mark, this permanent identification, or you won't be able to buy and sell things in the normal way. So as the video we saw this morning, there will be people who will survive. Most will not survive the 7 years. The second angel poured out his bowl on the sea. This is salt water, oceans. It turned to blood, like the blood of a dead person. Ugly. Let me back up. every living thing in the sea died. The only thing we would be interested in, living things in the sea, or anybody at that time would be interested in, would be for food. The food that comes out of salt water is fish and a few mammals that kids would call fish because they live in water, but they have a different system to survive on other than fish do. But every living thing in the sea would die. The third angel poured out his bowl on the rivers and the springs of water. Rivers produce some food. They produce fish, turtles, and some amphibians can live in water or on land. But mainly what we need reservoirs and wells and rivers for is drinking. I grew up in Michigan. The county I grew up in is just north of Wayne County, where Detroit is. And it was Oakland County. Now, a county is not a big piece of property, but the county I grew up in advertised 400 lakes. Lake water, unless it gets contaminated, is also good for drinking. I remember when I traveled in other countries, and in some places the people get used to. It's like getting measles and mumps and chicken pox. Once you've had all of that, you're immune. You don't have to worry about it anymore. But come somebody from the USA not used to it, and you can pick up all kinds of stuff. But there's a pill that you can put in water. And except for one serious disease which doesn't exist everywhere. So it's a very useful bottle of pills to have. You can drop a pill in a glass of water and it's perfectly safe. The third angel poured his bowl on the rivers and the springs of water, and they became blood. So they're useless. You can't go very long without drinking liquid. Then I heard the angel who was in charge of the waters said, "The way you judge is fair. You are the Holy One and the one who is and who was." Before the evening's over, we're going to talk about one who is and isn't and will be. Somebody who was is somebody who existed in the past. Somebody who is somebody that's existing right now. Somebody who will be is somebody who will be alive and existing in the future, but isn't now. You're the one who is and who was. The beast's worshippers, those who worship the Antichrist and the beast and the false prophet, have poured out life's blood on your people and your prophets. That's what they've done in the past. So you have given those worshipers blood to drink. If you contaminate the water and it turns into blood, you have no pure water to drink. And that's exactly what you should get. Then I heard the altar reply. I'm going to read verse 7 in another version. And I heard another cry out of the altar say, even so, Lord God Almighty, true and righteous are the judgments. They're fair. The bad sore that the people are getting, the ocean water turning into blood and everything in it dying, they deserve that. The fresh water not being fit to drink, they deserve that. The fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and the sun was allowed to burn the people with fire. I can't take it when it's really cold, but I can't take it when it's really terribly hot either. I've been blessed. I haven't lived. I've spent up to maybe a month or so in places that are extremely cold, but I've been comfortable. People used to feel sorry for us because we lived in a little trailer and it was 20 below zero in Wyoming one winter. And the people thought we must be freezing to death. They lived in big houses and they were cold. And our little aluminum trailer parked next to the church with the electric cord plugged into something inside the church, the people thought could not possibly be giving us enough heat. But we were very warm. However, you would go outside and your nose would freeze. You could barely breathe because the moisture in your nose would turn into ice. It's terribly cold or terribly hot is unlivable for very long. So they burned by a blazing heat. So what did they do? Did they change their mind and decided they would praise God? They spoke evil things against the name of God. That's not smart. That doesn't even make sense. I see we're being featured. So those of you that weren't here from the beginning, we're in chapter 16 of the book of Revelations. And there are 3 different occasions in the book of Revelation when 7 horrible things are passed out to the people who are alive at that time. Terrible things for them to endure. You would think that common sense would tell them, okay, you are blaspheming God and these terrible things are happening to you. How about you behave yourself? How about you don't talk that way? But it seemed like the worse they behaved, the worse treatment they got, and the madder it made them, and the worse they continued to behave. That's not very smart. So they were burned by amazing heat, but they refused to turn away from their sins, and they did not give glory to God. This is after the rapture. Those who believed in God, those who were born again, are not present. They've been gone. The period of time that's left is the last 7 years of, and on Wednesday night we study the Old Testament, and we happen to be in the book of Daniel and the book of Jeremiah, and some of the prophets that are talking, Old Testament prophets that are talking about this same period of time. And they tell us the same thing. This period of 490 years, 483 years, were up on Palm Sunday when Jesus was presented to Israel as their Messiah. And when the children cried out and worshiped Jesus, and the temple leaders said to Jesus, "Make them stop," Jesus said, "I can't." It was written, it was prophesied on that day, Jesus would be presented to Israel as their Messiah. They would worship him. And Jesus said, if they don't worship me, the rocks will have to cry out on that particular day. So we have 7 more years that are yet to come. We call them the years of tribulation. They are divided into a period of 2 periods of 3.5 years. It's in the last 3.5 years that things get worse. And so it stands to reason that of the 3 times 7, the 21 plagues, that those last ones are going to be worse. The 5th angel poured out his bowl on the throne of the beast. We have the Antichrist, the false prophet, and the beast. They get their power from Satan, the Antichrist. The kingdom of the beast became very dark. People bit their tongues because they were suffering so much. They spoke evil things against the God of heaven, but they refused to turn away from the sins they committed. It was, I should explain, and we've got a comment from our live broadcast that I'm also making a recording. So when we're finished with the teaching and we turn that off, then I'll be chatting with some of you, and then we'll turn chat back on for our guests also. But they refused to turn away from the sins they were committing. All these terrible things would not have happened, and they could stop happening the minute they stopped doing the things they were doing. The sixth angel, I don't have an extra computer here, and I don't have a map that's not on the computer. But maybe I can draw one in the air. Hey. The sixth angel, this is a prediction, pours his bowl on the Euphrates River. The Tigris and the Euphrates River, I remembered in the fourth grade in California, in social studies, you study California. But in Michigan, in the fourth grade, you studied the US of A. And in the fourth grade, we studied, I remember, the Fertile Crescent. The Mid-East, on one of the flags, is the crescent and the star. And speaking about the fertile, most of that part of the Mid-East is not too fertile, but on that part that is, it represents that. I remember the teacher told us to go home and ask our parents where they came from, so that we would know where our ancestors came from. I said, I don't have to know. I don't have to ask, I already know. Because when my parents got mad at each other, and parents do that sometimes, my mother called my dad a stupid hillbilly, and I won't tell you what my dad called my mother, because we're on the air. That kind of language is not allowed. The Euphrates and the Tigris were part of that fertile part of the world which was first populated, whether you're reading the Bible or whether you're reading a history book. Syria and Iraq, which have a common border, are proud of the fact that they have running through their country both the Tigris and the Euphrates River. When you want to know where this is not a video, no. I'm making a video, but you're seeing this on a live broadcast of iBlog. And if somebody else wants to answer him, that's fine. But I'm not going to answer any more questions till I'm through with the, at least this chapter and go into the next, because it's distracting for me. If you want to know where the Garden of Eden was, we're given the name of 4 rivers. The Tigris and Euphrates are 2 of them. One of them I can't find. The other one I was able to find. But those 4 rivers went through the Garden of Eden. This next plague that's going to have to happen is going to dry up the Euphrates River. On our live broadcast, I happened to show you about 4 to 8 months ago a picture from some missionaries that write to me on Prayer and Praise, and their children were visiting them, and they were on a boat trip on the Euphrates. It's not a tiny river. It's not like the Nile, but it is one of the main rivers in the Mideast. It says the sixth angel, so we've only got one to go after this one, poured his bowl out on the great Euphrates, and the water dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east. We're in the middle of a period of time that lasts 7 years. It hasn't happened yet. What I'm reading is prophecy of what and how it will happen. It tells you here that what's going to happen is some kings from the east are going to march. Now, we don't think of a war that happens in our day and age of people marching. We think of people flying in planes, riding in jeeps, maybe even on a motorcycle. I don't think of soldiers marching, not in our day and age. But this says that kings from the east, so from an eastern nation or eastern nations. And if we realize the country they're talking about, we realize that while some in that nation are wealthy, very few are. And if you get out a map, remember that this area that we're talking about has to do with 3 continents. Europe is one. The Mideast is another. And Africa is another. Beyond that, in one direction is the east, and in another direction is the west. But these 3 continents are all around what the Bible calls the Great Sea. And the Great Sea is what? The Mediterranean. The Bible also refers to Israel as being the east coast of the Great Sea. So you have the Mediterranean. Above it here, Greece, Rome. We'll eventually get to the Roman Empire. Before that, we have to go to the Greek Empire. Those are where 2 leaders from that portion of the country, 2 world leaders come. Before that, we have those coming from the Mideast. We have them coming from Babylon, and we have, which is now Iraq. And before that, we have world leaders coming from Egypt, which is south of the Mediterranean. So here's the Mediterranean. Up here, we've got Europe. Over here, we've got the Mideast. And down here, we have Africa. So this is the part of the country we're talking from. If you go to Israel, and this is all about Israel, what we're talking about now. In Israel, if you go east, depending on the size map you're looking at, or if you're looking on your computer, the size screen you've got, just go 3 or 4 inches to the east, straight east of Israel. From there, it's being prophesied that political leaders will march into Israel in the last days of this 7-year period before the Lord's second return. So let me go back and reread that. The 6th angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates. Its water dried up. You know, that's the problem with a river. You can't walk across it. I can't tell you how many people I have to explain. Captain, settle down. Be a good boy. I didn't turn any lights on, hoping that it would stay light until 7 o'clock here, and I wouldn't have to, and maybe the birds who are up here temporarily would settle down. If you're talking about, is it possible to walk today? To walk from China to Israel? No, it's not. Because you get to the Euphrates, a large, powerful river that has to be crossed. I can't, and I don't consider myself terribly knowledgeable in geography and things of that nature. But when I Google something, let's say I want to buy a computer, and I Google it, all the things that pop up on my computer tell me how many miles I am from such and such a store. No, I'm not. Regardless of which highway I take to get off this mountain, it is 21 miles to the bottom of the mountain, and then I can start looking for a store or a hotel or a doctor's office or whatever. But until I first go that 21 miles, there is no way. Now, something will pop up both on my screen and on the screen of the company that I call, and they'll say, oh, you're only 6 miles from a Sears, or you're only 5 miles from such and such a store. No, I'm not. I have to travel at least 21 miles to get off of a mountain road. And I keep trying to explain them, and it's just something that I figured out myself. But it's the only logical solution. And I wouldn't think I would have to explain it to college graduates. They must be using out-of-space cameras that tell you from this point to this point, it's so many miles. from up here. They look down and they see how far it is here to here. That doesn't tell me anything. Because from up here on the mountain, I have to go like this to get here. See, you don't go from here to here. Why? No road. I'm less than 1 mile from Lake Arrowhead. If somebody's in outer space with a camera and they want to see the difference between my house and the village of Lake Arrowhead, it's 1 mile. But unless I'm going to swim, if I'm going to walk on a road, or drive in a car, then it's not like going from here to here. It's like going from there on a circuitous route. If we're talking about somebody from the east going west to get to Israel and doing it on dry land, today you can't do it. But there will be an earthquake that's being predicted in this portion of the book of Revelation that's telling us that that earthquake will dry up. I don't know the details of how it's going to happen because the Bible doesn't give that to us. And I don't know enough about any other science that would explain it to me. But that's what's going to happen. Now that's the next to the last of these 21 plagues being announced by angels. Here's the last one. Then I saw, let me go back and read verse 12. The sixth angel, that's the sixth of the last seven, poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates. Its water dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east. Then I saw 3 evil spirits that looked like frogs. They came out of the mouths of the dragons, the beast, and the false prophet. They're spirits of demons performing miraculous signs. Anytime you see something that you and I would consider impossible, one of three things could be happening. Number one, it could be a fake. It could just appear to us to be international, to be happening and not really happening. How can something appear to be happening and not really happening? I learned of one occasion when, you've got to have an awful lot of money to set something like this up. But some magician, some entertainer set this thing up where there was a stage, a building on a limited area, and you paid a lot for a ticket to sit there. And when you went in, you were facing a city. You would look through the windows, you would look straight out, and there would be a city. But when the show was over with, you look straight out, and you're looking at the water in New York City. How's that possible? Oh, it's possible. I mean, you and I don't have that kind of money to pull something like that off. One of our, I believe it was the 75th anniversary of our church, be 26 or 7 years ago. We traveled to where it was celebrated in Portland, Oregon. The minister who was, well, the platform where the minister who was bringing the evening address and the people who brought the special music and so forth were on. When they started, I'm sorry, I can't do anything about him. I think by next week he'll be moved back downstairs, but right now I can't manage the stairs, so he's up here, and as long as he's up here, I've got nowhere to put him. He has to be confined in that cage because of all the things he's capable of doing if he's not confined. He has to be locked in, and then the key has to be put where he can't reach it. We have a video, 27 seconds, I think, that he gets the key, unlocks the lock, takes the lock off, opens the door, climbs to the top of the cage. He's just too talented to deal, so I'm sorry we have to put up with this. Hopefully by next Sunday I'll get him moved back downstairs. It's not, yes, there is a cage down there, but we have so many locks and extra things on it that I can't just put them in there. All those locks have to come off. They have to be transferred to another cage, so I just have to put up with his bad behavior. This stage, when our general superintendent began speaking, he was facing that way. But the stage began to move. And after 15 minutes, he was facing us. Another 15 minutes, he was facing that way. Another 15 minutes, he was facing that way. And at the end of an hour, that stage had gone all the way around. This trick, this thing that this entertainment had done, it must have cost a lot of money to pull it off. But the place where all the people were moved. And at the end of an hour's performance, the people who were looking out over the city, the buildings of New York, that had moved. So when they're looking out the same windows, they're now looking at the Statue of Liberty in the harbor. So when you have something that appears to be impossible, it could be something that's just possible with a lot of extra work and money and planning and so forth. That's a possibility. It is a possibility that the impossible can be done through the power of God. And Satan also, although his powers are decreased, he does have power. So there are 3 possibilities for an impossibility. One, that God is doing it and nothing is impossible with him. One, that Satan is empowering it and he has limited powers. Or that only we think it's impossible, but somebody has figured out a way to make it appear to be possible. So this is what's going to happen to the river, the Euphrates River. It will be, we learn from another scripture, through an earthquake, but it will dry up the Euphrates River, and that will make it possible for armies from the east. And if you look at a map, and by the way, if you look at a map, Google it, try to get a map, and I can't remember what you enter to get this particular kind of map, but I was looking at one the other day. Try to get one that allows you to move it so that you can appear to be at the North Pole and look down, because the world is round, but television screens are flat. Paper in books are flat. And you may be looking at something that may appear to be really far away. If you were on the North Pole and looking at it, it's very close. But because we go from flat to round, and I really wish I would have invested in the last globe that I saw, but I have so much stuff sitting around. Just tell me, if I had a globe, where would I put it? There's no room on top of the organ. There's no room on top of the fireplace. There's no room under, there's just no place to put it. So that's really why I didn't buy it. But I should have, and I will the next time I see it, unless it's a fortune. Because the perspective of looking straight east or straight north or something, when the Bible or any other book or person mentions a direction, the perspective of that changes when you realize that when you look on a page or on a television monitor, you're looking at something flat, when in reality, this is spherical. Okay. Then I saw 3 evil spirits that looked like frogs. They came out of the mouths of that Trinitarian of evilness, the Antichrist, the dragon, and the false prophet. They are the spirits of demons performing miraculous signs. They're miraculous for us. We can't do them because we don't have the power. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. They go out to gather the kings for whole world battle, a battle that the whole world will, in one form or another, participate in. That battle will take place on the great day of God who rules over all. Look, I'm coming like a thief. Jesus said he was coming as a thief in the night. What do you mean Jesus is going to be a thief? A thief is a bad person. A thief is a person who steals something that doesn't belong to them. He didn't say he was a thief. He says he's coming like a thief. When does a thief come? When you don't expect it. The worst thing you can do is announce to everybody you know that you and your neighbors and your friends and your kinfolks and everybody that goes to the same church you do is going to be where your grandson is going to get his doctorate degree. Because then the thieves know exactly when and where they can break into your home and take their time looking for stuff. He says, I'm coming like a thief. I'm coming when you don't expect it. When do you expect it? No, you don't expect it now. Those that aren't born again, that know how to get born again, that aren't expecting it to be anytime soon, aren't making any changes in their lifestyle. But you won't know when to start making those changes because Jesus is coming when you don't expect it. That battle will take place on the great day of God who rules over all. Look, I'm coming like a thief. Blessed are those who stay awake and keep their clothes on. They will not be caught naked. They will not be put to shame. If you're prepared 23 out of 24 hours a day, then 23 out of 24 hours a day, you're not going to be embarrassed. But what about that 1 hour? Most of us think we're not anywhere near that 1 hour, and we don't have a clue. It's a lot closer than what we think. Then the evil spirits gather, the kings together. The place where the kings met is called Armageddon in Hebrew. It's called Apollyon in another language. The seventh angel, this is the last out of 21, 3 groups of 7. The seventh angel poured out his bowl into the air. Out of the temple came a loud voice from the throne and said, "It is done." What does that make you think of? It is done. When Jesus told Mary, "Mary, John will be your son. He'll take care of you when you're old." And to John, he said, "John, Mary will be your mom when you need one." When Jesus had done everything he had to do, it was dark outside. An earthquake was about to take place. When Jesus did everything he had to do, of the 7 last words on the cross, the last was, "Into your hands I commend my spirit." Then Jesus said, "It is finished." Everything that has to be done for mankind to be saved has been done. That's it. And now this says, when the evil spirits gather around, the 7th angel poured out his bowl, and out of the temple there will be a loud voice that will say, "It's done." That was the 21st of 21 plagues, things that would happen. It is done. I think that same language is used And the seventh angel gathered out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple saying, "It is done." Same language in the other translation. Everything that has to happen, it's happened. It's done. Then there came flashes of lightning, rumblings of thunder, unto a powerful earthquake. There has never been an earthquake as terrible as this one since people have lived on the earth. Now, Israel is in, as is Southern California, or the rim of fire going from the west coast of the United States all the way from Alaska down through South America, going over to the east. That rim of fire. There's never been an earthquake as terrible since people have lived on the earth. I lived through the big one in Southern California, and it was not all that bad. Of course, I was living in a mobile home. They always happened about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and most of them when I was teaching school, and I was usually in the bathtub getting ready when we had an earthquake, and we always went to double check if water had come out of the swimming pool. That was what we did in those days. The great city split into 3 parts. The cities of the nations crumbled and fell. God remembered Babylon the Great. Huge hailstones, about 100 pounds each, fell from the sky. It was a little less than 100 pounds, but huge. I remember my first hailstone. I grew up in Michigan. My dad moved to Texas, and in between my 3rd and 4th years of college, I was visiting him one summer, and he was the head serviceman for a Buick Corporation. And they had, of course, the cars that they wanted to sell, the expensive ones, right out where people could see them. And then others that they wanted to call attention to, they had out in front. One day, I saw hailstones like the kind of snowballs I used to throw when I was a kid. And I had been in college for a year, and a new model of car had come out. But if you can drive a car, you can drive a pickup. If you can drive a pickup, you can drive a truck. But you may need a few minutes to figure it out. Minor changes. And I'd been off to college riding on a bus. I didn't know anything about the new Buicks. And somebody pitched me a key that would drive any of the cars there and gave me a big cardboard box to hold over my head. They wanted the most expensive cars inside where the mechanics worked on the cars. And then they wanted the medium price cars like out in the showroom. And then used cars, but still fairly good. They had an area that had roofs, but no walls. And they told me, start moving cars. And I'm holding a cardboard box. And these things the size of snowballs are made out of ice, are coming down. That was my introduction to something like that. Flashes of lightning, rumblings, thunder, a powerful earthquake. The great city will split into 3 parts. The nations crumbled and fell. God remembered Babylon the Great, and he gave her the cup filled with wine of his terrible anger. If this were Wednesday, I would remind you that this had to do with the terrible things they did to the temple before Babylon took them out. Every island ran away. The mountains could not be found. We've had this before in the Old Testament. No islands, no mountains. When we get a new island, it is simply an earthquake underwater. And if this is the bottom and this is where the water is, and you have an earthquake here, and what is flat land is like that, and then you get another earthquake, and then pretty soon, and it's above water, and then somebody says, oh, it's an island. No, it's been there all the time. It's just been underwater, and you didn't see it. They spoke, let me back up. Every island ran away. The mountains could not be found. Huge hailstones of 100 pounds fell from the sky. The hail crushed people. They spoke evil against God because the plague of hail was so terrible. We're coming up into chapter 17, and I'm going to close our video at this time. And until the next video, blessings on you.